Guys, welcome back to another video, and in this video we're going to be continuing on with our series on making accessible apps for Apple platforms. And in this particular video we're going to be taking a look at how we can ensure that a UI component, such as a UI view, is interpreted as an actual accessibility element. And then we're also going to take a look at how we can assign accessibility traits to our views. All right, so in UIKit, we're going to get started with that platform or that framework today, and then we're going to go to SwiftUI and then AppKit as per usual. So the first thing first is that how do we make sure that our UI view here is an accessibility element? Because if we go into, right now, if we go into Xcode and we run our code, what I have is I have pretty much a view, and this view is just a green square with rounded corners. It interprets it as a group, and that works fine, but maybe on a physical device it might not be focusable, this view. And a view might not be focusable for any number of reasons, such as, say, an image view. Well, what we can do is we can say clickable view dot is accessibility element, and we can set that to true. Now, by default, a UI view is focusable by VoiceOver. It is considered an accessibility element. It just doesn't have anything else to it other than group, right? But if you have a view that isn't an accessibility element, you can use is accessibility element to make it one. If we try to run our code now, we again get a successful build. But now, nothing really happens. We don't even hear group anymore. So I guess UI view technically isn't considered an accessibility element. I was wrong on that point, but that's fine. We now have an accessibility element in this UI view. Now, right now we don't hear anything being announced with it. How do we change this? Well, the big thing is that we want users to interpret this view as some kind of button that they can tap. So we can do this by adding a trait. Now, to add a trait, an accessibility trait, to a view, we need to do the following. Clickable view dot accessibility traits. Accessibility traits, we're going to set it equal to, it can be an array of traits or a singular trait. We're going to make it a singular trait here, dot button. Now, button is what is going, this accessibility trait button is going to convey to VoiceOver and every other assistive technology that this is a button. But if we take a look at some of the other traits that we have adjustable, allows direct interaction, button, causes page turn, header, image, keyboard key, link, none, not enabled, plays sound, search field, and so on and so forth. We just want button. Now if we save this and we run our code, we get a successful build. And now our view is focused on, and we hear button being announced because VoiceOver sees that we've set the trait that it's using at, we set an accessibility trait for button. So it'll announce it as a button. It doesn't have any label right now. So let's go ahead and set one. Clickable view dot accessibility label equals, let's say, click me, save, run. We get a successful build. And now we will hear click me button. And in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen, in the little black box for what VoiceOver is saying, you can hear, or rather you can see, click me button. Precisely what we want. And now the user knows, oh, this is a button, and it wants me to click it. So I've clicked the button, and now that tap gesture that I've assigned to this view fires off. All right, so that's how we can assign an accessibility trait to a UI view in UIKit. How do we do this then in SwiftUI? Right? Well, what we can do is let's go to our SwiftUI project. So go into SwiftUI. You can see here I have a rectangle. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and assign a corner radius. Well, we can say rounded rectangle with a corner size corner radius of 10. There we go. Right now, this view gets treated much the same way. It is announced as a group, but what we can do is above on tap gesture, we can say dot accessibility, if I could English, accessibility element. All right. So now, once we apply accessibility element as a modifier, which creates this, which pretty much tells SwiftUI, hey, this is an accessibility element, convey it to assistive technology as one. If we save this, and we run our code, we run it. Now, it doesn't say anything at all, because this is now an accessibility element with no metadata telling assistive technology what exactly this is supposed to do. Like, it doesn't have a label or any traits or anything like that assigned to it. So how then do we assign an accessibility trait to a SwiftUI view? Because in UIKit, we said accessibility traits, and we set that property. Well, in SwiftUI, we have a modifier called accessibility add traits. And this takes in a single or an array of traits. Go ahead and do dot accessibility add traits. Here we can say dot is button. Now, is button will convey to a screen reader such as VoiceOver or any other assistive technology that, hey, this view is a button. But if we take a look at the other accessibility traits, we have allows direct interaction, causes page turn, is button, is header, is image, is keyboard key, so on and so forth. So you can kind of go through those and read what they're for. But one thing you will not find here is, in SwiftUI, is you will not find is adjustable. Now, why is this? Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that in another video, but simply put, SwiftUI doesn't treat adjustable as a trait that you can assign using accessibility add traits. It has its own modifiers specifically for adjustable views, and we'll take a look at those later. But for now, we're just covering traits. So go ahead and change this back to is button. Save that. Run the code. Now all we hear is button. So we know this view is a button now, but we don't know what this button is for. And that's not very helpful to the user, right? I often, in many apps, see just button. Or rather, I hear just button, 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 button. And I have no idea what that button is even for, which is not helpful in the slightest. This is one of the most common accessibility problems in apps I have found, particularly on mobile, where there's a button and its meaning is conveyed either by color alone, an image alone, or an image and color, but doesn't have a label that a assistive technology can read. So all you hear when you're using VoiceOver, for example, is button, and that's it. So please make sure that when you are creating custom buttons and you're not using a button view or an NS button or a UI button for whatever reason, make sure that you have an accessibility label assigned to it, so we people who use assistive technologies can actually use this button, so we know what it is and what it's for. All right. So while we are at it, let's go ahead and add that label. Dot accessibility label text click me. Save and run your code again. There we go. And now we get click me button. We can click this all we want, and it works just fine. All right, so that is how we can assign an accessibility trait to a view in SwiftUI. Now, what about in AppKit? Well, AppKit, it works slightly differently in this regard. So let's go ahead and take a look, shall we? Let's switch to our AppKit project. Mac AppKit. All right. So here, what we have, much like the UI kit and Swift UI project, is we just have a green view in the center of our window, and that's it. Nothing too special, except with a native AppKit app, with a native macOS app, we can't focus on this view at all. So, why is this? Well, the reason why we can't focus on this is because it's not an accessibility element. Let's go back to Xcode, and let's try to make this an accessibility element. So we'll say clickable view dot set is, and you can see that we don't have any accessibility stuff here. Why is this? Well, that's because NSView does not conform to NS accessibility protocol. So we don't have any kind of we don't have any of those things. So if that's the case, how exactly then are we supposed to, how are we supposed to treat this as an accessibility element? Well, that is relatively simple, actually. Now, you might think, oh, hey, let's try making this an NS control instead of NS view. So NS control. All right. And so let's say clickable view dot set is dot is let's see here, we want is accessibility element. All right. So if we try to use is accessibility element, that will return whether or not our control is an accessibility element. But we can say set, we want set accessibility elements. Pass this true. Now, our view is, in fact, a accessibility element because NS control is a class that conforms to NS accessibility protocol. We have to make sure that our view that our custom views, right? If we have a custom view class, inherits from NS control or something similar that conforms to NS accessibility protocol if we want this to work how we intend it to. NSView does not have the necessary accessibility properties or accessibility methods or anything like that, right? So just keep that in mind. If you have a normal NSView that you're using for some control, don't. It's not a good idea. Let's try to run it now. We get a successful build. And now our screen reader, our assistive technology, can focus on our green square. It just doesn't have any metadata to go along with it. So we don't know if it's a button or anything like that. We don't have any labels to go with it. Nothing. So how do we change this then? Well, right below where we are setting this as an accessibility element, we can say clickable view dot set accessibility role. Now you might be wondering, why are we saying accessibility role and not accessibility traits? Well, the thing about AppKit is that it doesn't treat traits for accessibility as a trait. It treats it as a role. A role and an accessibility trait are the same thing. It's just different verbiage being used. It's different wording. You'll often see role being used in web development as well, where you can specify what kind of element as an assistive technology treats an HTML element. Same concept applies here. So here we can have many, many different kinds of roles. So we have application, browser, busy indicator, button, cell, checkbox, color well, column, all kinds of stuff. There are some roles that you will not find in an iOS application, others that you will find in an iOS application as well as AppKit, macOS apps. But I urge you to look through all of these and kind of read up on what it is that they do so you can assign the right role to your custom views. I still recommend, though, that instead of using a custom view, if possible, use one of the native AppKit controls. And if you can subclass it, if you can subclass one of these built-in AppKit views to make it do make it do something that it can't do, but you want it to be able to do, then do it. So that's just some advice there. But let's say button here, not column. Button. There we go. Go ahead and save your code now and run it. We have a successful build. And now our green square, when it's focused on by VoiceOver, we hear button. And you can read down on the bottom left, it says button. And that's great. We now know it's a button, but we don't have any accessibility label. We don't know what the button is for. So let's go ahead and set that by saying clickable view dot set accessibility label, and we'll say click me. All right, save that, run it. Successful build. And now we get click me button. And we can click this all we want, and it'll do what our click gesture recognizer has for its selector. All right, so let's kind of review what we discussed today. So today we discussed how we can make a UI view or a switch UI view or a NS control in UIKit, SwiftUI, and AppKit accessibility elements. We covered how we can assign accessibility traits or an accessibility role to a view. And we discussed the importance of including an accessibility label in a custom view like this. And then finally, we discussed the fact that NS View does not conform to NS Accessibility Protocol. So, in order to use set accessibility label or set accessibility role or any other pertinent accessibility methods from that protocol, NS View is not the class to use. NS Control and other classes that conform to NS Accessibility Protocol are the classes to use for that. So a button, a text field, a pop-up button, those things inherit from NS Control, and NS Control conforms to NS Accessibility Protocol, so we can use these methods on things like that. All right, so that pretty much does it for this video. Thank you all so very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.